deaf ears. Their sins are cries for help. They remain far from truth. Our hearts are heavy. We are desperate for you. Left, clinging to the hope that you are coming. Can you hear our voice, O Lord? Will you answer our pleas for mercy? Our prayers do not fall on deaf ears. We believe you will come. We know you are coming. Direct our feet. Deliver us from this place. Come. Rescue us.
A time of exile, for sure, but there's always hope. Some people might think I'm a little unfair to draw this comparison, and I think a study could be made on it where many of these similarities could be drawn out. I'm just going to mention three, but I think that there are some interesting similarities between ancient Israel and our nation, United States. I mean, after Moses led them out of Egypt and Joshua led them into the promised land, largely speaking, Israel was mainly a one God nation. Well, when we began, a huge majority of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence were one God believers, believing in the God of the Bible. And there were very strict instructions going back to ancient Israel when they went into that promised land that they were not to adopt the pagan practices of the people in the land of Canaan, but they were to drive them out. God said, this is the land I gave you. This is your land. But as the years went by, slowly those heathen practices were accepted in the Israelite nation, and they ended up committing all kinds of idolatry. Well, America started, I think a lot of people would argue, as a Christian nation, mostly. I know not everyone was. It was a land of religious freedom, for sure. Although the majority of people that started this group, this place, we were pretty strong believers in the one God. And then as time has gone on, we've become much more pluralistic in our view of religion and how we kind of say, yeah, we are much more tolerant and accepting of people who have different feelings. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that a nation that started out mainly worshiping the one God has now kind of changed. Wouldn't you agree? Back to ancient Israel, because they adopted all of these other pagan religions and committed idolatry, then God allowed them to be sent into periods and seasons of exile. So other nations now, oppressive leaders would come down on the nation of Israel because they didn't just look. And Nathan spoke a little bit that. It ended up becoming kind of a vicious circle. They would have those times of oppression, they'd call out to God, and they'd gain their freedom back. And then sure enough, that idolatry would creep in again, and it would just continue on like that. In America, we haven't fallen to another nation being oppressive in their leadership over us. But couldn't it be argued that we do have our own types of captivity? Wouldn't it be fair to say that we are in economic bondage? That's not too far-fetched, is it? Of course we are. And wouldn't you also say that materialism is a real trap for us? The desire to get more and to have more for self. Not for the purpose of sharing, but isn't there kind of a climate in our country that it's more for the purpose of having more of a self-indulgent culture? And wouldn't you say, because of things like crime and immorality and ever rising, that also is a type of captivity that we're under? I think the analogies and similarities could be drawn all afternoon of what I'm talking about between these two nations. Each nation with their own form of exiles between advents. In other words, between notable points in history and the advents for the ancient Israelites. It was coming out of Egypt and entering into the Promised Land. That was the notable point in the event. And then they were waiting for that Messiah, that anointed one, the next real advent. And then in our country, we are on the heels of that coming Messiah. That's already happened, and now we are awaiting the advent of his earth-shaking and shattering return. Between advents, we live between these notable events in history. This is the end of 2013. It's been 2013 years since what? What notable event happened about 2,000 years ago? Synonyms for Advent are words like appearance, emergence, occurrence, dawn, birth. What notable appearance, emergence, occurrence, dawn, birth happened 2,000 years ago? You know, it's funny because you can take philosophers and educators and historians and theologians and scientists and mathematicians and believers and non-believers, and they will all together come and say, you know what? The most notable event that happened 2 millennia ago, the most incredible advent 2,000 years ago, was the birth of the Christ child. And even though they might not believe that he's the Son of God, there's still a unanimous acknowledgement that that was a game changer for the globe. He changed things. The truth, he was born of a virgin. He lived a sinless life. He died a substitutionary death. He was resurrected and appeared to over 500 different people in that new flesh. He ascended to the right hand of heaven, and he promised to return. That's the truth. And you don't have to take my words for it, because what I'm telling you is what he told us. I'm taking his word. And in fact, the last part is in John chapter 14 and verse 1. Look at the screen. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I'll come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am. So we live between advents. We live between notable events. Between the birth and the return of Christ. And his promised return is one of the posts upon which we hang this thing called hope. It's one of our hope hangers. And hope is putting our confidence in something we don't yet have. It's putting our trust in something we haven't yet experienced. That's hope. And our hope is that when Jesus comes, he's going to make everything new. He's going to change everything. There's already some inside changing that's going on, and every once in a while we show it on the outside with maybe a little bit different choice in the way that we live. But the fact is, when he does finally come, we're hoping that it makes a big difference. Because right now, living on this planet, things can get pretty raunchy. I know we've just had a season of Thanksgiving, but you know, for some people Thanksgiving, for some people Christmas, for some people holidays are the worst. Their families are so messed up and they don't come together and there's strife. Is there anything worse than family strife? That is the most painful. But when Jesus comes back, everything that is wrong will be made right. So, disease and divorce and depression and discouragement and death, gone. And there'll be no need for chemotherapy or radiation. And no hospitals or doctors or nurses or medicines will be necessary. And there'll be no call for a mediator or an arbitrator. There'll be no subpoenas or legal papers ever served. when he comes back. There'll be no demand for courts or judges or attorneys or police. And funeral homes and mortuaries and coffins and caskets and grave markers. They'll be gone. They'll be gone. World peace will cover our globe. So that will eliminate all the resources and the training for militaries and for weaponry and the combat and the conflict. It'll be swallowed up in peace. The notable event of the second coming of Christ will be an advent like no other. That's our hope. It's our advent of hope, His return. Because right now, we live in a place that is broken. Our hope lies in the advent. So we live between advents. I think I've said that a few times. So how do we survive? Living between the advents. How do we wait? I think this hope business is a lot more significant than we ever thought. Doesn't hope lose its meaning when everything is just peachy? Doesn't hope find its foothold in our hearts when we don't have anything else to hold on to? I mean, that's it? It's just hope? G.K. Chesterton said this. Look at the screen. Hope means hoping when things are hopeless. Or it is no virtue at all. As long as matters are really hopeful, hope is mere flattery or platitude. It is only when everything is hopeless that hope begins to be of strength. I have no personal experience with giving birth. I know that doesn't surprise some of you, but I don't. But I have been a close observer several times. And one thing that really is amazing is that baby or those babies that grow bigger and bigger. There comes a point in that third trimester, in that 9th month, that 8.5 months, where both of us are thinking it's getting more and more impossible for what is within to be without. Now I know the joy of hearing the heartbeat, and I know the joy of capturing a moment on the ultrasound is in the back of our mind. That's there. But the fact of the matter is, her stomach is getting so large. How is this going to work? You wonder how it can possibly happen. And then you go through the wild pain. But there still is the hope. You know, we heard a heartbeat and we saw that thing moving around. I think it's going to work. Do you think maybe that's why God told the Apostle Paul to explain between the advents with that very analogy? This is Romans chapter 8, verse 22. Look at the screen. For we know that all creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. And we believers also groan, even though we have the Holy Spirit within us, kind of hearing the heartbeat and catching the ultrasound. We've got the Holy Spirit within us as a foretaste of future glory, for we long for our bodies to be released from sin and suffering. We too wait with eager hope for the day when God will give us our full rights as His adopted children, including the new bodies He has promised us. We were given this hope when we were saved. If we already have something, we don't need to have hope for it. But if we look forward to something we don't yet have, we must wait patiently and confidently. And maybe this is the key. Isn't hope based much more on what is to come? Instead of living in the past and longing for comfort, what if we lived in the present and we longed for the future? You talk about a mind renewal. I'm doing everything I can to make sure I have all the money I can so I can live as comfortably as I can. Oh, and then you completely scratch that for, whatever happens now happens now. I'm living in the present, but I'm thinking about the joy that's before me. Hope. All right, let's recap very quickly. Jesus came 2,000 years ago. The last major advent. And just before he left this earth, he promised to come back and make everything new, which will be our next major advent. So how do we make it on a broken planet between advents? The word I've been throwing out is hope. We are to be people of hope. Now that's a nice word, and I think that's an okay sentence, but what does that mean? I mean, how can I sink my teeth? Oh, I'm going to leave this place and I'm now going to be a man of hope. What does that look like? Well, get your programs, write this down, because I want you to meditate on this a little bit. I have found some real encouragement thinking about hope in these terms. How I can be joyful and thankful in hope even in the pain. I think the first direction or pathway, not a step. This isn't a, okay, you do this and this and this and you get hope and hope and hope. No, it's just kind of a, oh, let's try this direction. And the first one is on the screen. We hold to tomorrow. Your little musical that you watched as a kid with Annie was right. The song will come up. Several years ago, they did an experiment. It was conducted at the University of California at Berkeley. The experiment involved placing Norwegian field rats in a tub of water. They did this because they wanted to see how long that they would survive rat paddling before they drowned. And they found that most of them would be able to make it just over 7 hours before they drowned. They had another tub of water with another group of rats, and they did one thing different. Just when that second group was just about to go under, at that point of exhaustion, just over 7 hours, the scientists reached in and grabbed the rat, held it out for just a few seconds, 3, 4, at the most 5 seconds. That was it. Just held it there for a second and put it back in. You know what happened to the rats that were taken out for a few second retrieval? You know what happened to them? They lasted over 20 hours, some over 24. And they concluded that this research shows that the second group were able to swim longer than the first group because of one factor. They had hope. There was something inside of that little rat brain that made them think, since they were rescued for a moment, once, then they were holding out that it would happen again. Rat hope. I love the story about the dad who told his son and built this all up. They were going to go on their first fishing trip together. The little guy could not wait, didn't know how to cast, didn't know how to do any of that, but they were excited. They had the truck all loaded up the night before and were all ready to go out early the next morning. And as the dad was tucking him in saying, man, we got to get to sleep fast as we're getting up early. It's going to be a great day. The little boy reached up to his dad and he put his arms around his neck and he said, Daddy, thank you for tomorrow. He's on to something. It's a thank you for tomorrow. It's holding on for a better tomorrow. I think that's a part of how we sink our teeth into being people of hope. Well, what about when the tomorrow continues to linger? In other words, it just goes on and on and on, the waiting over and over, and what we are enduring is more and more difficult, and it doesn't seem like we're getting any relief, it's just getting worse. What about when the tomorrow doesn't seem to come? How do we be joyful and thankful during the wait? I know we're in the waiting period right now, and I know it's a mist, it's a vapor. I know when we get on the other side in eternity, we'll look back and think, what was my deal? But we don't think that now because we can't get outside of time. We can't imagine a million years in the presence of God with somebody who's ever enlarging and it's just incredibly big and wonderful. More than an eternity will we even be able to take him in. But right now, in the vapor, it is what it is. It's tough. So how do we wait in joyfulness and thankfulness? How do we wait in hope? I think that there's more to waiting than sitting out on life and hoping we arrive at death safely. I think there's more to the vapor than that. I think there's more to waiting than tying our hands and deciding I'm not going to take any risks at all and I'm just going to try to hunker down and endure the pain. I think there's more. There has to be something else to help us while we wait. Let me tell you about a millionaire named Eugene Land. He was asked to come and speak to a class of 6th graders, 59 of them, stuffed in a classroom in the East Bronx, East Harlem. And so he goes to this class, and he had some different things prepared to say because he really wanted to make a difference. He thought, this is a one-shot chance I have with these 6th graders. And he had it all kind of figured out, what he was going to say and outline and get him to this point and really try to inspire them, make a difference, do what he could. And it was right before he walked in the classroom, he realized this isn't going to connect at all. And I know it. I'll stand up there, those kids are going to be yawning, I got to do something. So he scrapped his notes and he shot from the hip and he spoke from his heart. And his speech was short and it was sweet. And this is what he said. Stay in school, and I'll help pay for all of your college tuition. That's all he said. This was in Parade magazine. Stay in school, and I'll help pay for your college tuition. The article said that at that moment, the lives of those 59 6th graders instantly changed. You could see a notable difference. They had hope. Their present struggles immediately stopped defining their future, which is what was going on up to that point. Now, you need to realize that a large percentage of the kids in that class would all drop out of school. And Eugene Land knew that. So he went in with that offer. One student said, I had something to look forward to, something waiting for me. And when I read that, I thought, maybe there's another clue. Maybe the wait becomes easier knowing something is waiting for us. Waiting for you. Here's the kicker. Over 90% of those 59 6th graders graduated from high school and enrolled in university. Doesn't joyfulness and thankfulness and hope find a platform in what it's listening to or where it turns its attention? Suddenly for these 6th graders, everything changed. They listened to something, they focused on something different. If we look and listen only to the present pain, it's really a good chance that hope's going to juke us. And it's going to be elusive and we're going to miss it. Holding on to tomorrow, I definitely know that will help. But I need to plug into something day to day, something now, that's going to make a difference. And that's the second point that I think I want you to write down and meditate. I think we've got to plug into elsewhere. Somewhere else. I definitely think we need to hold on to tomorrow because a better day is definitely coming. That next Advent, it's going to change everything. But now I need something a little bit more tangible, and I think that is where plugging into something else different. Back in 1982, it was a balmy October afternoon, and in Badger Stadium, which is where our current coach for the Razorbacks came from, there in Madison, Wisconsin, it was packed out. Over 60,000 diehard University of Wisconsin football fans were watching their team take on the Michigan State Spartans, mopping up the field with the Wisconsin Badgers. But what seemed odd is that the score, even though it became increasingly lopsided, the Wisconsin fans would every once in a while break out with tremendous applause and shouts of joy. And it was really confusing because they were getting their clock cleaned. Michigan State was killing them. But the Wisconsin fans would just erupt. And what they found out later is that 70 miles away, the Milwaukee Brewers were beating the St. Louis Cardinals in Game 3 of the '82 World Series. And many of the fans were listening to their portable radios with little earphones. So when something great happened, they would all go nuts. And it was at that point when I was reading about this, I thought, there they were responding to what was going on at another game, in another sport, in another place. There's something to be said for being plugged in to what is going on elsewhere, because sometimes the things that are going on where you are really difficult. So we need to be plugged into somewhere else. You guys, let me tell you something. There's another game going on in this thing called spiritual warfare that is much more important than on anything presently that we're going through. Much more important. And in that game, something fantastic is about to happen. And you talk about a game changer. When that sky rips open and he comes down on that billowing white cloud, the commanding chief, things really are different. Instantly. What would happen if we were plugged into that? I love what Fred Craddock says. Look at the screen. There is at the center of reality a groan. And the closer to the center you live, the more you will hear it and the more you will share in it. The center of creation, the center of the church, the center of ministry, the center of those things that belong to the people of God, and the center of the human race. The closer you move there, the more you will hear the groan. The more you will share the groan. And you will recognize it. Paul says that the groan in creation, in us, in God, is a groan not of death, not the death throes, but a groan of childbirth. God is giving birth to something new. God is doing something fresh. God is creating new heaven, new earth. And by the time I have mastered the groan, I will have to exchange it for a wow. I'm telling you guys something is about to be born that is better than we can dream. Our groaning may be one of the biggest blessings that we could ever have, because the fact that we groan means that we were created for another world. I love the logic of C.S. Lewis. Look what he says. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I am made for another world. Well, of course. When you talk about hope, I mean, we can plug into this kind of idea that something inside of me can't be met by anything on this planet. So I've got to be created for something else. We plug into that, our present troubles will not overwhelm us, but will point us to another elsewhere. And that's going to fill us with unbelievable hope. Isn't that why we kind of get a jump start on Christmas? I know a lot of preachers get up and they talk about, they've taken Christ out of Christmas. It's become too materialistic. I love it when we get a jump start on Christmas. I'm one of those weird guys. I mean, I like it to start the 1st of October. I think it's great. I love all the glitz and the glamour and the lights and I love all that stuff. I think it's cool. In fact, the more I think about Christmas, is it really about what we're going to receive? I mean, I know it's like that when you're a kid. When you're a kid, all you can think about is what you're going to get. But as adults, come on, we don't think that way anymore. Oh, I can't wait to see what my many children will bring to me. I don't think that way. You don't think that way. You think about what you're going to get. The thing that changes for us as we move into adulthood about Christmas is the look on the face. It's that shock and that surprise when maybe it's a tear. Have you ever given a gift and you see somebody cry tears of joy? What is that worth? That is a moment. It's kind of become the standard that we want in our family. Oh, the gift brought tears. Okay, it succeeded. That's what we want. It's a moment where that person has an inkling of the depth of your love. And you gave that, and Christmas, you guys, this is a good season. Now, you're not going to get a preacher up here. Nathan, when he preaches on it, maybe you can take care of the materialistic stuff. You're not going to hear that from me. I think this is, pour it on, man. Show your love. I mean, this is a great time. Lap it all up. Man, it just reminds me, I was speaking last week with a guy about our situation here at CPC, and he's been very supportive of the work here. I think I've told you guys before that we we bring in $6,000 to $8,000 a month from your tithes and offerings. Our budget is $10,000 to $12,000 a month. So how do we? Well, the reason we're able to stay afloat is because of the generous work of other people around the country that believe in what we're doing. So they give us the extra, and so we're able to pay the light bill and make things happen. Well, I explained that to this guy, and I explained we're on a trajectory right now to be completely self-supporting by the end of 2014. And that is so good. That is really good. You guys are very generous with your gifts, and God in His grace allows us to continue to reach more people, and they see how important it is to trust the Lord with their finances. This will continue, and that's what you want. You want a new church plant to become self-supporting in 2 years. And we're headed there. So I explained to him, this is where we are, and this is our need. And he said, oh, well, we're going to be very happy to help out City Point Church. And I said, oh, man. He said, listen, this is near the end of the phone call now. And he said, I just need to really thank you for telling me about this. And thank you for letting me know so that I can give this money. I thought, you're thanking me? Isn't this kind of opposite? Isn't it me kind of, putting my fingernails on a chalkboard to even ask? Anybody love fundraising? I don't really enjoy that. And here's this guy turning the thing completely around, thanking me. I've got this money, and we have plenty to live on, and I love finding out where there are needs, and I just love it. He's experienced the joy of giving. He got it. Maybe the real reason that we so love this time of year is with all the pain and the suffering and the cold weather, Christmas is a time when we get to actually act like the one who made us in a very specific way. We get to take on one of His very specific traits. We get to experience the joy and thanksgiving of hope because we get to give. You guys, isn't that kind of Christmas? I mean, the best part of Northwest Arkansas, isn't it fall and spring? I mean, I know some of you love the cold weather and you like to go skinny dipping in sub-zero weather. You enjoy that. I don't enjoy that. I like cold weather because I like being able to get warm. I like a fire. I like a cup of coffee. I love the cold for a second, but then I like to get warm. I love to look out and see the cold and be inside and be warm. But what I love is fall and spring. It's not hot. It's, you know what, for me, the Advent, the notable occurrence for me is fall in Northwest Arkansas and spring in Northwest. That is the good stuff. And we're stuck in the middle with cold, barren, wasteland winter. And right in the middle of winter is Christmas. And we love Christmas because we get to give. Isn't that our hope during winter? Isn't that kind of how this works? So what's our hope between Jesus' come and Jesus' return? We're holding out for a better tomorrow. And we're plugging into somewhere else that we know who wins this thing. We read the end of the book. That's why when we sing phrases like, when we arrive at eternity's shore, death will be just a memory and tears no more. Oh, we can hold on to hope. All right, guys, here we go. Advent service number 1, December. We're on our way. Let's pray.